No boy. I can see boy's gonna be a real problem.
Okay, so that's okay. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
He's kind of cute.
Get back.
Get back. Get back, boy. Okay. Hey, everybody. I'm Lucy. Welcome to the next edition of my YouTube series. This time we have a conversation. I'm joined by my lovely mother, Miss Kelly Keller.
Hello.
And that's a great name, isn't it? I don't know. If you know anybody whose name is like that, let me know, because I've never found anybody whose name was Kelly Keller. Anyway, what we're going to talk about today is education overall. I know it's a hot topic right now, especially with the pandemic and everything. Seems like everybody on Twitter has an opinion about education, and we do too. So some of the things we're going to talk about and why you might want to listen to us is we're going to go over my educational experience kind of chronologically. I went to...
Helicopter going by.
Sorry, there's a helicopter. We live kind of near like an army base, so we get helicopters that fly over. And one of our neighbors, like her husband works on the army base, and he flies his helicopter over almost every day and waves to her, and it's so loud, it's pretty annoying. Anyway, so I went to public school for most of my educational career. I, was in gifted and talented. I did some of that sorts of stuff, so we're going to talk about that. And then my last 2 years of high school, I actually went to a public residential sort of STEM focused school. So I have a bit of like boarding school experience, alternative education there. And then I ended up staying at my state university for college, and I did online schooling and traveled some. So I've sort of had a wealth of experiences that I'd like to comment on. And then I actually work for an education company now. I work for SchoolHouse, which is forming learning pods of like micro schools of 4 to 8 students outside of the traditional school system. So I've kind of like run the gamut of educational opportunities in my area, at least. So we just wanted to talk about it and share our opinions. And if you have any thoughts or any similar experiences, please share those in the comments. I wanted to bring my mom on because she has always been my #1 educational advocate. I would not be where I am today if it was not for her constantly pushing me in school, going and talking to administrators, telling them, hey, my kid needs to be, doing harder stuff. So she's my #1 fan, and I wanted to, get her perspective on some of it, especially when I was a kid and, wasn't totally aware of like what was going on. Sound good?
Yep.
Okay. So I went to Sinking Fork Elementary School, which is just a public school out here in the country. Generally, we had a good experience at the elementary school. I had friends, I liked my teachers, we did cool stuff. So overall, I know sometimes I'll see people on Twitter, bashing like elementary school and public schools. And yeah, maybe there could have been more project-based learning, and maybe I didn't need to be there for 7 hours a day, 5 days a week. And I don't know, maybe my creativity was completely stifled, but I never really felt that way. It was actually, I don't know, a really good experience. And I was fortunate that in 3rd grade, I was started in the gifted and talented program. And I also see a lot of hate for the gifted and talented program from people on Twitter. And maybe I just had an unusually good experience, but for me, it was awesome because I got pulled out of class. We got to go on field trips. I remember one time Miss Weaver took us to, we went and visited that sculpture, or I don't know, that helicopter that's like over by Walmart. And we went and got burgers at Farrell's, and we went to like our little museum downtown. And those sorts of things I wish all students could do. I was lucky that I got to do it with gifted and talented. And another thing that I got to do through that program was when I was in 3rd grade, I got to go help out in the kindergarten classroom once per week, and that was great. Like, for me, that was amazing. I hope the kindergartners enjoyed having me there, but, being taken out of, like, the traditional classroom where I'm just being taught at and being able to spend a little time teaching others, like, actually helped me learn more, than just spending an extra hour in class. So I was really fortunate to have those opportunities. And, in my ideal world, every student gets to do those sorts of things, right? Not just the few kids who are in the gifted and talented program. So overall, pretty good elementary school. But I know that my mom, she had some qualms with our elementary school. So you want to talk about that?
Basically, now we have an airplane going over. Loud airplane. Basically, mine, I liked almost all of it. I did not like the way it was so structured, especially when I felt like it was free time. For instance, in the cafeteria, if it got a little bit loud, and it's a pretty huge room, then it was 0 talk level. 0 talk level meant you couldn't talk at all. You used to go eat lunch with Lucy a lot, and that was, I thought, just ridiculous to have to sit there and not be able to talk to her. I feel like the kids didn't have enough active time. Kids need to be active, they need to be able to talk.
Right, I think our recess was literally like 15 minutes a day.
And that was it.
And that was it.
For 8 hours. And then if you go to lunch and you can't talk, so they basically didn't get to talk. And I just think that was a little bit overboard. I don't think those kids were that bad or that loud. I understand there needs to be some kind of discipline that needs to go on. But that part of it I didn't like. But most overall, I liked Sinking Fork and the elementary, the whole elementary school, and what they did with Lucy and tried to push her with starting out in reading in first grade.
Oh, yeah.
Just constantly pushing books at her, encouraging her with the accelerated reading to try and get the most number of books, and that just fueled her fire and love of reading. So they really picked her out early. She even had her 3rd grade teacher tell her to send her an invitation to her graduation because she knew she'd be the valedictorian, and she was.
Oh.
So in 3rd grade, she recognized I'd enter that early. Said she'd only had 5 kids that she'd ever seen in her life, Lucy being one of them, that she could tell that they would be a valedictorian, and Lucy was. So they noticed it right off the bat. So that was great.
I told you my mom was my #1 fan. She's always been my #1 fan. Her talking about reading, just like one quick funny story to give you some perspective on Kentucky as well. We did the accelerated reader program. I don't know if you guys are aware of that. Read tons of books and we take the test on them to get points. And I'm not sure what grade it was, maybe 4th or 5th grade, where at the end of the year, the students who had got the most accelerated reader points got a surprise. And usually it was something like, I don't know, going to a restaurant or a little field trip, but I guess they were lacking this year because they called all of us into the library and they brought in a woman, and this was our reward. And this woman had a possum, like the animal, a live possum on a leash. It was the biggest possum I ever saw, and our reward was getting to walk the possum on its leash around the library. Like, I don't know if that's not the most Kentucky thing you've ever heard. But as a kid, I thought it was great. So honestly, maybe it really was a cool reward. But yeah. So then after middle school, after elementary school, we went to middle school. And I just went to, our run-of-the-mill, county middle school here. It was, a totally different experience. Way bigger school. We've got a lot more kids now. Things are more structured. And, both myself and my parents quickly realized that this, just the standard track for a 6th grader was not going to work for me. I mean, I was literally bored stiff in my classes. And I think my mom felt that too. Some of that just, in 6th grade, can she do 3 more years of this and then 4 more years of this in high school, right? Just these boring classes. I mean, she's not getting that much out of it.
This is when I realized in 6th grade that I was just on the fence about what do we do? Where do we go with this? Of course, there's a couple private schools in this town. Is that the route? That was in my thought. Just something needed to be done. Kind of drifted in and out of thoughts that whole year. And then as soon as she got into 7th grade, very quickly, I realized she's got to move up. She has to be more challenged. So I was able to actually have a lot of autonomy in that school as a parent to actually just voice my opinion about what I wanted done, and they did it. So she moved up in 3 different classes to 8th grade level. Yeah.
So when I was in 7th grade, I was taking 8th grade math, 8th grade reading, and 8th grade English, I think. So it was sort of just split grade, half and half.
So there. She was basically like a half 7th grader, half 8th grader, and then finally made the decision toward the end of the year that she just needed to completely skip 8th grade because there was no way I was letting her go through complete boredom and not being challenged again. So we made that decision. That was a very difficult decision, but I basically had the autonomy to go to the principal and say, I think this is what needs to happen. She needs to skip 8th grade. And she said, I absolutely agree. No problem. She could skip. And it was that easy. And I just couldn't believe it.
Yeah, I was shocked too, and like I remember some of my friends being shocked too, because I don't know, skipping a grade always seemed like sort of this taboo thing, but we found that, you know, my parents just being really proactive about it, and me, you know, getting good grades to back it up, obviously, like they were willing to work with us, and I feel like that's something a lot of people in public schools don't think about. Like they just kind of think you have to accept what the status quo is, but really I think there's more flexibility than you'd think, because that's what we found. I mean, our you know, our school district isn't some amazing outlier school district. Like it's your standard run-of-the-mill small town Kentucky school district, and we were able to actually accomplish a lot. And once again, like I wish more students could have done what I did. You know, I was the lucky one, right? I was certainly very lucky, and I was an outlier, but certainly more students could have handled, you know, different things and would have benefited. So yeah, middle school, like as far as the classes, you know, I just trudged through that. What the best part of middle school for me was the extracurriculars, and that's something, I mean, I know a lot of middle schoolers do extracurriculars, but for me, that was like my golden thing. I mean, when I think back on middle school, I don't really remember anything I learned in any of my classes, but I remember my extracurriculars, like, totally. I mean, I was in choir, which was great. And my favorite thing is I was on speech team. That was amazing too. One of my teachers, fortunately, we had to do a speech in 6th grade, and she heard me and she was like, oh, I want to recommend you to like join the speech team. And I got joined with like the greatest teacher ever, and we did speech competitions. So that was wonderful. And then I was a library aide. I don't know if they have library aides at your schools. If they don't, and you're a parent, you should ask about it, because it was actually like the best thing I did, especially being a kid that loved books. What I would do is 1 period a day, every single day, I would go into the library, and I would basically be like the library checkout person. You know, I worked with the librarian, kids would come in, I'd check their books out, I'd reshelve books. We even started a little book club, and it was just the absolute best, and helped me, you know, get through the day. Like, felt like I was actually doing something meaningful and contributing when I got to do stuff like that. And I really wish more people had that opportunity, or just even knew about it, you know? Because even if your school doesn't have that, I feel like that's something you can advocate for, because that's a great way to, you know, get kids involved. So, yeah, I skipped 8th grade. And I was already a year younger. I was already on course to graduate, you know, at 17. And so then when I skipped 8th grade, I was going to graduate at 16. And so when I started high school, I was 12. And I just went to...
Nerve-wracking for me.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, definitely. Because this high school had, oh gosh, probably 1,300 students. Just our county high school. I mean, everybody and their brother went there. Huge class sizes. I mean, you're thrown into the mix like really quick.
Wolves.
Yeah, thrown into the wolves. I mean, literally, when I was 12 and like going into the lunchroom, and I didn't really know anybody either, right? Because I'd skipped a grade. Like, I knew of some people from my previous classes, but I had no solid friend group. And so literally my freshman year, the first group of people in the lunchroom that took me under their wing, I didn't know them. It, like, I was sitting at a table, and they were great people. Like, I'm not putting them down at all, but like, just for being like 12-year-old me, kind of sheltered, like, a 15-year-old girl who was pregnant, and then another 15-year-old guy who was like regularly dealing drugs from our lunch table. And like, you know, and then for me, it's just like, whoa, like Bambi eyes over here, and you just have to acclimate really quick. And it was fine. I handled it. Like, it was cool. But that's just the kind of, you know, that's the kind of stuff you see at public school.
Which was great for her to see that. And I'm glad that we made that decision, and don't regret her going through that. She's probably going to get on track to tell you we had a goal at this point.
Yeah,
the reason it was okay. Because I know you're sitting here thinking, what were you thinking letting a 12-year-old go to high school? Well, I was half sick most of the time. But we were on a somewhat of a this goal, this track of, we had heard of this place called Gatton Academy. And it was something what she touched on when we started about the residential school, STEM school. And we got hooked up with a guidance counselor who basically put it in, this is what you need to accomplish in 2 years to get accepted. Mind you, this was a application-based, very difficult school to get into, and she did get into it. But she had to accomplish this, and this. And this guidance counselor helped us with that whole mindset of this is what we need to do in 2 years. So it took my mind off a little bit of this going to high school and this public school at 12 to we have a goal now, and now I can relax, because now, hopefully she will get in and she can just fulfill her dream of school and education and that challenge she needed.
Yeah. Because that was the theme through middle school and then my first 2 years of high school. Because the residential school was the last 2 years of high school, junior and senior year. It was just me wanting to be more challenged because I'm sitting there bored in class. And even my first 2 years of high school, having already skipped a grade, my mom was up there in the principal's office, like, you need to move my daughter up and put her in 10th and 11th grade classes, AP classes. And I did, And some of the people in my classrooms were like, or the juniors are looking at me like, what are you doing here? And I was like, I'm just trying to learn something. I mean, I have to come here every day. I might as well try to learn something, right? So yeah, once we found out about Gatton, it was like full steam ahead. Like, I'm just going to get through these 2 years. I'm going to get really good grades. I'm going to get a really high score on the ACT. I'm going to get into this school, and I'm going to leave this drudgery behind, right? Because, at my school, we never did anything fun. We did not go on field trips. We did not do experiments. One time we tried to do an experiment in my biology class, literally the one time. And right before we were going to do it, a kid in my class lit a piece of paper on fire and put it in the trash can. So they changed their mind. Like, we just did not have those capabilities with 35 kids in a class. And I don't blame my teachers at all, because it was hard. And I don't necessarily blame the kids either, because a lot of people just come from rough backgrounds, and it sucks. Like, it literally sucks. There's so much structure. We don't have a good outlet for anything. I think we had 3 minutes in between classes to get to your next class throughout this long building. Like, you don't even have time to use the bathroom. It's just not very respectful of children, honestly. It's not respectful of children's autonomy or their interest or their time. Was like a big thing there.
They spend a lot of time, to me, on making sure that the standard test that they had to take at the end of the year started at least 3 months prior to that, making sure these kids did well, reviewed. She already knew it like 2 years ago. So there comes that board stiff again. And they just spend so much time worrying about that standardized test. Which I guess they have a reason for that. I'm not sure of how all that works, but it's way too much time for somebody who's just bored, that has nothing to do or think about. Yeah,
one thing that was great about, my parents in particular, is we were all sort of on the same page as far as this goes. And my parents, like, if I woke up and it was just a really beautiful day and my parents weren't working, and, I didn't really feel like going to school, I wouldn't go to school, and we'd go on an adventure instead, and I certainly learned more on those days than I did going to school. And, we took days like that regularly, and I wish more parents would do that with their students, if it was feasible, because you don't want to be truant, obviously. I think we were a day or two under truancy, which, as far as I know, there's no repercussions for being a day or two under truancy. So maybe get as close to truancy as you can. But, like 5 days a week, every week, it's a lot. It's a long time. It's a lot of days. So, I don't know, like, if your kid's at public school and they don't take very many field trips, I don't know, take your kid on field trips on some of the days off, because they always did that, and it was a ton of fun. And it empowered me too, to know that my parents cared, and they realized that the struggles that I was having, and they would help out sometimes. It wasn't just so strict, which was really nice. So I did end up getting into that residential school. So it's a public school, actually, and I think they're starting to have, more and more of these popping up in different states. It was only for students from Kentucky, and it was on a university campus. And if I could, change one thing, there's lots of things I would change, but I would open up multiple of these schools. Maybe even one of these on like every state university campus, because obviously there's bright young students everywhere, and we need more of these kind of schools, because it was selective, and they did have to turn down a lot of people, that would have thrived there. And it was amazing, though, because I started taking university classes there, but like with my cohort of high school peers, and we all lived together. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I have been waiting for. I mean, it was hard for me to go because I've always been a homebody, you know? Like, I didn't even really hardly go to summer camps because I didn't want to leave my parents.
It was an hour and a half from here. She hasn't told
Yes.
you that. So it's not like it was just right around the corner.
Mhm.
It was an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Every bit of an hour and a half.
Yeah, and I was 14 when I went, too. I was
Yeah.
14 when I went. And so, basically, I moved out when I was 14. Having been back since quarantine, I'm 20 now, almost 21. Having been back since quarantine is the first time I've, like, you know, lived back at home for an extended period of time since I was 14. So, I mean,
Woo!
yeah. So it was like a big deal. And I know that it was harder for my parents than it was for me, because within like 2 days of being there, it's like I had made my new best friends. We were doing all sorts of things. I was being challenged. It was just like a total blast. And I wish more people could have that sort of experience, because like it really set me up, you know, for like a great future.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Any comments on Gatton?
Oh, just, yeah, one of those, just hardest things I ever did moments. So,
Letting me go. Yeah.
won't talk about it because
You're
coming
gonna cry.
again.
I know, yeah. Okay, we'll move on for Gatton. If you happen to live in Kentucky and you have a young student who, you know, wants to do more, see more, I highly recommend applying. It's called the Gatton Academy.
Mm-hmm.
And if you live in another state, I know there's one in Texas. I think there's one in Virginia, North Carolina. Like, they're popping up. And it was great for me, so you might want to look into it. So, as I was winding down there, coming, you know, time to graduation, obviously we're all thinking about college. And at that point, I was still like a homebody of sorts, right? Like, I hadn't been living at home, but I didn't want to go very far away. I didn't even apply for any schools that were more than, you know, 3 hours away from my hometown, because I didn't want to be that far away. But it ended up coming down to 2 schools for me. It was Western Kentucky University, which is a school where my high school campus was on. So basically the same exact school, because I already been taking university courses, right? So it was stay on at that school and just continue, or Vanderbilt. I got into Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt's just about an hour from, you know, where my parents live. It's in Nashville. So that was a really good option. And I bring this up because my 2 options were like polar opposite. So I'm 16, right? I don't really know what I want to do. I'm thinking maybe I want to be a teacher, but I'm not sure. I mean, I'm trying to think of a major, and
Yeah, because what 16-year-old knows what they want to do, right?
Right. Yeah,
They're
exactly.
supposed to figure out their college career right then.
Yeah. So it was hard, and I think I was, you know, it was an option that tons of students have faced and are going to continue to face, which is, do you go to your state school, which you might have a really good scholarship to, which I did have a really good scholarship to. I had a full ride to the state school. Or do you go to a more prestigious school like a Vanderbilt, or, you know, a Harvard or a Princeton, where it's going to cost you $40,000 a year out of pocket? And that's what we were looking at. You know, me and my parents, we sat down and we were like, you know, my parents offered to, you know, help out with half, and I knew that was going to be a burden on them, and that was going to be a burden on me, you know, getting those loans. But still, like, it's Vanderbilt, right? Like, we toured the campus, and I mean, it was great. Mm-hmm. Like, the food was amazing. You could just tell, like, it had a really good vibe. And I mean, I wanted to go there, like I did, but I had to step back and think about, you know, a few years down the road, how am I going to feel about this decision? Being, you know, me and my family cumulatively being over $100,000 in debt. Mm-hmm. And not necessarily knowing what I wanted to do, being young. I was going to be younger than everybody, which has never been a big problem, but you can you can tell sometimes, you know, when you're trying to hang out with people, that I'm a bit younger. And I generally, like, was pretty sheltered growing up, not like in a bad way, but just, I don't know, didn't go out and do much, like, by myself. So making that decision was hard, and I ended up choosing the state university. And of course, looking back on it now, it was obviously, like, I think the best decision. I think I still would have turned out fine and done really cool things if I had went to Vanderbilt, but I look at where I'm at now. I look at how I don't have any loans. I actually profited some from staying at my state school. And
I don't have any loans either.
Yeah,
we don't have any loans.
Yeah, we don't have any loans. No family loans. And I'm saying that knowing that I actually, like, had a terrible time at WKU for part of it too. Like my first year post high school, I was in person there. I was the most depressed I've ever been in my life. Like serious, actual, not get out of bed, depression, stopped doing my work, that sort of stuff. And that is just not me. I've never not done an assignment. Like I was always a very good student, when it came to doing my assignments and stuff. And I ended up transitioning to online because of that, taking a semester off and going online, which I highly recommend, by the way, taking a semester off. And so I went online and I moved cities completely over 2.5 hours away and continued my degree through there. So I was able to keep my scholarship. So like I had a weird college experience. I've never even been to a college party. I've never been to a college football game. I didn't do any of that stuff. Wasn't in any extracurriculars involved with my university. Now I did stuff in my community, but not through the university. And yeah, I missed out on some of that. Like I wish I would have had some of those experiences. I didn't have a ton of friends, but I was able to individualize it and do what I wanted to do. And I was able to have great part-time job opportunities. I was able to travel being online. I was able to see my family a lot. So overall, like, I think that was the best decision. And I think you agree looking back on it too.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Looking back on it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because at the time for both of us, it was also like saying, oh, I go to Vanderbilt, or yeah, my daughter's going to Vanderbilt. That sounds more prestigious. It is more prestigious. Sometimes people on Twitter ask me, where'd you go to school? And I'm like, Western Kentucky University. Nobody's ever heard of that. There's no recognition for that. Sometimes I feel like that slightly brings me down, but then I remember, like, no, that I got my degree. I got a degree. It does not matter that much. I have no debt. I'm free to do what I want. I've already been able to travel and do so many things by being, by taking that route. So I'm not as worried about, like, the status games as far as that goes anymore.
And she actually was able, even taking a gap semester, to receive her master's in this past May, so at 20 years old. So that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't have happened at Vanderbilt.
Oh, yeah, no way.
So, yeah,
Right.
It's pretty impressive. And your degree is the same. The school you went to, well, what people look at your degree. So,
Yeah.
Good decision.
Yeah. And now I'm working at SchoolHouse, which I mentioned in the beginning. So now we're all the way circling back. And, like, I'm helping elementary schoolers, form these micro schools. And, I talked to my parents about this, and I was like, if something like this had been around when, I was a kid and it was financially feasible, is that something that you would have wanted for me? And they were like, I mean, yeah, pretty much. Like, for sure, because, you get to go on more field trips, do more project-based learning. And I hope that's a future we're moving towards, because a lot of the things that I want to change in the education system, could happen if it was smaller class sizes and more personalized attention. Because most teachers, like, people who, go to college to become a teacher, most of them are genuinely want to be a teacher, good people who want to help kids. Like, you don't just, I don't know, I think most people don't just go into that career because they can't think of anything else to do. Like, it's hard. It's not an easy job, and they certainly do not get paid enough. So when I just think about, I don't know, changes that we can make, just whatever helps more people access the good parts of the education system that I was able to access, different extracurriculars, this residential school, not necessarily a residential school, but just something more challenging, being able to be challenged more, and then something where kids can have smaller class sizes and can do more of those experimental type things. Because that was just something my parents did a fantastic job of supplementing that kind of stuff, outside of school for me. And I was so lucky, but so many of my peers were not lucky. Like, I have, like, one of the best sets of parents in the world, right? And most kids, or not most, but a lot of kids don't. So it's, it's hard. It's hard when your parents aren't being your advocate.
Yeah. I felt impelled to constantly challenge her as soon as she got home from school. Get a snack. Let's start on this. Let's start on this workbook. Playing trivia games all the time. Trivia games in the car all the time. Trivia games on walk all the time.
So many trivia games.
Studying for the ACT every night for 30 minutes before she went to bed, because I just knew she didn't always want to do that, but I knew she needed to do that to succeed the goals that we were all three kind of looking at.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, they pushed me for sure, and I was really lucky to have that. So, I think the overall theme and sort of our goal with this conversation, is just to show that, I went through public school. I did these different things. I turned out fine. I'm sitting here today. Life is good, but we've seen a lot and we've done a lot, and there is, for the most part, as a whole, I think that the public education system in the U.S. is doing a disservice to most children. Not just kids like me who were, gifted, but the kids who aren't as well. And just everybody in the middle. Like, I just think it's overall too much time, not enough autonomy. Kids don't get to learn what they want. There's not enough hands-on type learning. And so, I don't necessarily know what the solution is, but I think just having conversations like these is a good thing to do, sharing our experiences and maybe inspiring some of you guys to, talk to your kids or your friends who have kids who are, going through school. Because, for example, the company I'm working for, SchoolHouse, it's a great option, these micro schools. If that's something that's financially feasible for you, I highly recommend looking at it right now. But what the problem is right now, with the way our government's currently set up and with the way, education dollars are allocated, for families who can't afford $20,000 a year on their kids' education, you have to go to public school, or if your parents are working and then they can't homeschool you, you have to go to public school. And so also just wanted to help people see that there's a lot you can do within your public school system too. If you're in public school right now, I think there are things that you can change, advocating for more extracurriculars, going and talking to them and moving up in classes if you want, talking about starting a gifted and talented program if you don't have one. There are things you can do. You can take control of your education and try to make it a little better, which is what we did. And I hope more people are able to do in the short term, while over the long term, we're all working together to, figure out a better solution for everybody. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's all we have now. Love to hear any questions or comments that you guys might have. And thanks to my mom for participating.
You're welcome.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.